How might we listen and interpret others who use social media? How do we understand those social media users from the audience perspective? Are we decoding their social media communication correctly? Indeed, who uses social media? Understanding social media users is a practice that we either take for granted and simply perform, or that we strategically undertake with rigour and passion. A useful way to approach these questions is to think about how social network sites listen, or more specifically, how the users listen to other users on those sites. In social media, users are generally split into one of two categories: participants or lurkers. The former is usually the user who contributes a lot of media or actively participates in discussions. Lurkers, on the other hand, are thought to be those creepy internet folk that don't contribute anything and are always looking over your shoulder, like that person who reads your texting conversation on the train. Some perceive them to be more like readers than writers, whereas those with a more critical stance suggest lurkers extract the energy from online communities without offering anything back. However, in 2009, Kate Crawford started to think about the lurking activity in a completely different way, expanding and developing on the concept of social media followers. She portrayed lurking as a more active role of paying attention in an online environment. In developing her concept of listening as an online form of attention, with particular focus on social media platforms, Crawford notes there are three types of listeners: individuals who co-create ideas and debates, politicians may augment their election campaigns and provide policy announcements, and corporations who are attempting to get closer to their customers. Each listener faces a set of disciplinary imperatives about developing a social media presence and a greater capacity to listen to others online. The trick here then is for us as social media users to align our online identity that we construct with one of those types, individual, government, or corporation, to increase our listening potential and be heard. However, the problem is we, as social media users, often attempt to seamlessly slip between these communication modes from the same social network site. This blurring of personas makes the act of listening increasingly difficult. Often, and in contradiction to these listening categories, we are using social media platforms to perform traditional broadcasting tasks. We are sending a single message to masses of people. Once that message has been received, it is unclear if it is meant to be an individual message, something that is politically inspired, or a commercial venture. It's confusing for the social media listener to consume a generalised update, which is not aimed at any individual in particular. Instead, what is useful as a social media producer is to aim your content at a particular category of social media user. The graph you are looking at now indicates how social media users have adopted and shifted their communication approach to use specific social media platforms to align with their social media identities. Given that social media platforms are frequently changing and their lifespan is uncertain, it is probably best to group them into categories rather than focus on specific platforms. These are professional, gaming, creative, productive, travel, microblogging, and locative. To explore how users listen to social network sites differently, we might think about how users frequent their engagement on social network sites in differing ways. In 2010, Esther Hargitay and Uli Patrick Scher designed a typology for understanding how people use social network sites. This typology can be useful to indicate how users listen in these spaces and how well our online representation has been developed. They note 4 user types: the dabbler, who uses one social network site sometimes; the devotee, who uses one often; the sampler, who uses more than one sometimes; and the omnivore, who uses multiple social network sites often. This is arguably true of all users, but it does provide a starting point for understanding how users on social networks listen. What these four categories of users indicate is that people are listening in different ways across different platforms. These lists are often built to provide a feed of knowledge in some specific area, for example, satire or politics, and those who contribute do so because of their expertise in such spaces. We are actively listening to those online identities because of how they present themselves in the online space. In other social media spaces, we may have an increased engagement experience. For example, our network of friends on Facebook likely indicates a more social connection with those users who tend to be friends and family. In these sorts of spaces, we may spend a longer amount of time because we've curated this feed with people that are very close to us. We are listening to them because we are genuinely interested in their lives with increased attention. The main point to take away from this discussion is that different social networking sites attract a variety of online personas who communicate for specific purposes. When we engage as both producers and consumers of content, we acknowledge the affordances and limitations of those platforms and how other users construct their purpose in these spaces. This is crucial to understand when aligning our online identities with social network sites. It is not simply a one profile fits all, nor is it a one message fits all. Just as the message is carefully created for a particular platform, so too should we construct our online identities as social media users.